Channeling Science, and I am here with the December forecast, and I'm actually going to do it on the spot with you. So if you have something smart to say, you can comment in the comments below, or if you're watching this live, you can absolutely add your own comment and we can do it together. If you do like what I do, and you can check my channel to see if that is true for you, you can subscribe, like, and share with like-minded people so we can get pleasurable discourse here in the channel. So December, what we're looking at is basically the chart of transition of the planet, Auser. Auser, the sun and the moon. With, how do you say Auser in English? Without the sun and the moon. But we're going to look at lunations later as well. And this is from astroseek.com, and describing the passage of the planet throughout the month. So from the quickest planet to the outer planets, Mercury is going to travel from Sagittarius to Capricorn, um, Venus as well. So towards the end of the month, we're going to reach a situation where uh, Mercury and Venus conjunct Pluto in Capricorn. So that's something to look forward or to be aware of. Mars is going to keep going backwards. It's going to be retrograde the whole month. So we're not getting a direct Mars. Slowly relieving its angle or its square with Neptune here in Pisces. And Jupiter is going to go from Pisces into the beginning of Aries. Lilith is going to be opposing Pluto the entire month. So that's gonna account, like that's something that we just can't avoid the entire December. She's gonna be in Cancer, opposing Pluto. And that's an interesting position. Lilith is about our instinctual drives and needs, and sometimes wounding. And the opposition to Pluto puts those in conflict with people in position of power, which we also know that Pluto is not alibidinal either. So these are two major forces um, working, the equally powerful, um, working in opposition, in tension throughout the entire month. So let's begin. I would like to go over the lunations at first. So lunar phases is going to be better for this month. Um, I want to take a look. So we're gonna have, so the new moon we will have in the end of November in Sagittarius. Okay, that makes the full moon in Gemini in December 8th. What is this no here? Surgery. Do not make surgeries, of course, on the full moon. Like if you can avoid it. And I believe we have a chart. So let's just look at this lunation chart. Thank you. December 8th, the moon is going to be with Mars. This is a significant one. So it's a culmination of something, but not only think of, which is an excellent way to think about, because it's going to cover the entire so far Mars in Gemini direct and backward movement up until December 8th. We know Mars is only going direct around January 2023, as it's not going to leave Gemini until March 2023. But this lunation culminates a significant amount of Mars in Gemini while Mars is still retrograde. So it's an incomplete full moon in that sense. It's going to be sort of a kind of a trining trining Saturn. Um, so definitely something that we did that had long-term implications, something that happened around our our Mercury house, our Gemini house, 6 months before December 8th, right? That's 6 months prior to December 8th, is culminating. But note that this conjunction with Mars, we used to talk about full moons as culmination points, but Mars is itself is about something that is incomplete. Mercury ruled sign, especially Gemini, has a problem with completing things. So we have an incomplete culmination of something. So with Mars going direct, um, probably around March, crossing this point again, we will we will have a reignition of this full moon. So pay attention to this full moon, because of it's not the end of the story for you. Uh, Probably separate videos about it. I just want us to take a general look at this formation without breaking it into the houses. Um, Jupiter is still going to be in Gemini, direct, and it's going to be sextiling Pluto. So it already is. The sextile to Pluto here is interesting. Um, Perhaps blessed effect, so we can get a chance to change our beliefs around something that also has to do with the end of Pluto in Capricorn. So hierarchies in our lives, authority figures in our lives, the places where perhaps we are authority figures and perhaps we used to be subordinate. So maybe our worldview changes around those Plutonian and plutocracy uh, itself. Um, so that's an ongoing transit. Venus is going to still be at the end of Sagittarius, while Mercury is already going to be in Capricorn. Both of them, but other than that, it's not too much of a big deal. So, yes, that was for the full moon. And do we have another lunation here? We do have December gonna have a new moon in Capricorn, which of course is not a good time to make a surgery. So if you are no, we don't want to have invasive treatments when the moon is increasing. In general, definitely not when it's full. But this one is a new moon, and we also don't want to have anything significant right on the new moon. We wait for the first crescent moon, unless it's surgical intervention, and then we wait for the moon to decrease. So that's why you saw the no on the table. Um, that new moon in Capricorn, the first degree of Capricorn, we're going to have a stellium in Capricorn at that point with the Sun, the Moon, Venus, Mercury, and Pluto, giving us a big sort of a kind of a preparation for the not grand finale, but at least the last segment of Capricorn before Pluto will return with retrograde to Capricorn. So this is a new moon that is definitely a big deal. It's opening a new 6 month cycle in the Capricorn house in your chart. On a mundane level, something to do with hierarchy, plutocracy, messages from the hierarchy, perhaps also to do with finances, with banking. We know that there are a lot of upheavals around all types of investments, including gold. So definitely there's going to be an announcement. There can be an announcement, not right at the full moon, but when the moon hits, perhaps a day later, when the moon hits Mercury, then we might have an announcement regarding finances, regarding the structure of finances, something that can be even on a global scale. Um, and how it will be accepted is another big question, but know that Mars is still retrograde in Gemini, so that message will not be final. It will need to be revised. And the ascendant of this lunation is also impressive because it touches on right on the future upcoming eclipse point at the summer. So I don't remember if it's the April eclipse or the May eclipse, but definitely there is an eclipse right on this point um, when the North Node hits Aries. So remember, we're starting a 6-month cycle within which we're going to have an eclipse right where the ascendant of the lunation is. Pay attention to 15 degrees of Aries, Libra, Capricorn, and Cancer in your charts because they are going to be lit. And pay attention to this point right at the lunation, okay? Right when when it happens in your own natal chart. This is something that's going to be on the 23rd of December. This is for Middle East time. It's going to be in the 22nd if you're in Australia or Asia, and probably also towards the 24th or the end of 23rd if you are in the western side of the globe, in the United States and so on and so forth, Canada and the Americas. It's quite a powerful nation. The moon it's a 10 degree, it's a wide orbit, is applying to square Chiron. So it's not going to be a comfortable new beginning. It's going to trigger a wound around the Aries house, um, which may or may not be something that you will, purge. It's going to be a convenient new beginning, and that is important. Um, because that's a 6-month cycle, including an eclipse cycle, that's going to be inconvenient news. Um, and Jupiter is already in Aries at this time. Uh, Jupiter is squaring the moon, so that definitely means that this is a big new beginning that also happens to be inconvenient because as the moon is moving from its invisible point to its visible point, it's going to square Chiron and it's going to be within the scope. An event is not just a minute, okay? It's a scope of something. So if the moon is going to be squaring Chiron um, within its phase of becoming visible, it definitely means that this new beginning is uncomfortable, even if we don't see it in the freeze of the new moon itself. Okay, we are looking at the two-dimensional chart, but notice that this is something that is dynamic and it's moving around. So, yeah, that's something to remember. All sons of 15 degrees Taurus or Scorpio are going to be touched by Uranus again. This time, some of you perhaps might be heading towards your second solar return with Uranus in a hard aspect to your sun. Some of you. So, yeah, stay strong. It's liberating but inconvenient. Um, this is what I have to say about this lunation. And why don't we have a coverage of the moon cycles? So we're starting off December 1, and then we're going to animate the chart. Why the moon? Because the moon is the closest to Earth, so the moon, let's say, a hard aspect between Saturn and Uranus. It could be in the sky for like 2 years, on and off. Of course, when it gets tighter, shit happens. But if I get the moon triggering one of these planets by hard aspect, that is going to manifest quite certainly, because hard aspects are manifesting aspects, and the moon is the closest to Earth, so it's going to affect us energetically the most. This is also the moon when we're doing elections and when we're doing magic, because we want to attract the energy of another planet, and the moon has to apply it preferably by a hard aspect, so that is a manifesting aspect, so we can call on the energy of the planet. So if I want to know what's happening in the sky, the best way to do it is to see, okay, what's the moon doing? Okay, so we're starting off with the moon. And during this day, this moon is going to conjunct Neptune and then Jupiter. So let's see if we can animate this chart. I know we can. Oh, let's do it. Animate the chart. So I will give it. Oh, now it's easier. Now we see on December 1st for some of you is going to be still in November 29th for some, for the Australian part, and for the Americans it might not be there before December 2nd. So the moon is going to be conjuncting Neptune, and when it's going to conjunct Neptune, it's also going to apply to sextile Pluto, while hard aspecting Venus and Mercury there, exactly squaring Mercury in Sagittarius, and sort of a kind of a squaring Mars. It's separating from the square to Mars, um, but this is a T square with an outer planet within the T square. So messages that can get lost, um, people that can get lost. Okay, of course, messages that can get lost. I wouldn't say this is especially, like dangerous for women, like the Venusian, but it can be something that is upheaval in the economy, because Venus is also to do with agreements and finances. So on a mundane level, this is all in all a shaky time. Um, it's transient, but it definitely leads this T square. And yes, Neptune is a thing to watch for. So messages going missing, people going missing, um, also things going viral or leaking messages, things that go viral but can go askew. So you can have, like, a viral post. If one of these touches your meat heaven, you can have like a viral post, but that people misinterpret. Okay, so the effects are quite unexpected there. With Mars retrogrades, that anything there would need to be revised. So whatever happens on that day, it's not the end of the story. And there we can just continue. Later that day, we're going to have the moon applying to conjunct Jupiter. Again, sextile in Pluto. So this is an interesting one, because some of you might try to get the last bit of magic that you can with the moon conjuncting Jupiter. Um, so while that might be a way to go, do notice that, the location of Venus, like this particular chart with the ascendant in Libra, is not the highest you could get, if you could get, but then, what you have before that, Virgo and Scorpio. Yikes. Um, and both Mercury and Venus are opposing Mars retrograde. Of course, they're separating from this opposition, but it's still there and it's very prevalent. So for day charts, this might be especially yucky. But if you do manage to somehow catch the last bit of bountiful rays of Jupiter, maybe you could do something with it. It does sextile Pluto. However, it does. I see it squaring the lot of fortune there. Okay, I don't have anything smart to say about that. But that's for the moon. Continuing on, and I think we can have another like 6 hours. And the moon is approaching the conjunction with Chiron. Let's give it another couple of hours to catch the exact conjunction. Yeah, so it's a bit of a visibility issue. Okay, because Vertex is there, but it's Chiron underneath there, and the moon is conjuncting Chiron, trining the sun in Sagittarius. So this is happening on December 3rd. December 3rd. For most of the planet, the Australian part, it might be December 2nd. Um, this is where the moon conjuncts Chiron, trining the sun, separating from the trine, but it's a good time to shine the light on the place that needs tending to. A bit of a drama therapy there. It's transient. All in all, it's not a terrible it's not a terrible angle. You can work with this. When Let's see, when the ascendant gets in Sagittarius. No, that was too much. Nah, it's too much. But when the ascendant gets in Sagittarius, you might want to work with this aspect. And here the moon also begins to apply to Venus and Mercury from a Mars world sign. So do remember, Mars is not happy. So that is not so much constructive. Um, but the moon can ease a bit of the opposition we have to Mars. It's not something you would start something new on, but it's something that can alleviate the bit of tension you have between your Mercury and your Sagittarius house. So this could be your home life and your career, your relationship and yourself, or your second, eighth house, and the moon is helping there. So going on, and like I believe we can go for another day. Let's do that one. 6 hours. And the moon is approaching Uranus. This is something that you want to know. Let's do it to 3 hours. Another 3 hours. Okay, North Node. Not very useful. It's triggering eclipse point, but it's not. The moon approaching Uranus. Applying to square Saturn. So this is something to notice. It is December 5th for some of the planets. Probably within December 5th for most of the planet, and then December 4th for the Australian and Asia. And the moon Uranus, it's a shaky time. Okay, it's moon hitting an outer planet, and Uranus is hard on the nervous system, so you might get emotional fluctuations around this time. Just if you can do your self-care, or just know that it's transient, that it's a couple of hours, a day to the, at most, that you're gonna feel a bit shaken, and just brace yourselves and know that nothing happened to you. It's just, but of course, it can be a shocking emotional insight that you get that unnerves you. Okay, because it's the moon, so a shocking insight, a revelation. It can be a revelation about a lunar figure, a mother figure. So yeah, that can happen. But other than that, you just might get moody. You just might get moody and feel like your emotions are kind of like at dis-ease, and that's transient. Okay, it can be as simple as that. It doesn't have to be like this big Uranus thingy in your life. And we go a day forward. Um, okay, so when the moon hits the 25th Taurus, it's going to be conjuncting Algol and it's going to be applying to trine Pluto and to sextile Jupiter and Neptune. Okay, this is an interesting one. For those of you who want to do an Algol talisman, I'm not an expert on how to do that. So if you are like that, that might be, some of you might be trying to catch up with Algol, and that's separating square to Saturn. It does affect that, so it may be a time for an Algol talisman, but I don't know enough to tell you if it's any good as an election. Um, and yeah, because the ascendant here, you can get the ascendant in Taurus. That's not the problem. I just don't know if that's a good thing to do. Some would say yes because it's like with the malefic. I don't know. But the moon also sextiles Jupiter and Neptune, and it applies to sextile Jupiter. You know what? This one is worth maybe staying a little bit longer for. This is when, yeah, this would probably be right on Algol. I want to get it into 29th degree, 28th, and we're gonna get to the 29th. No, let's do 2 hours. Okay, it goes 1 hour backwards. 1 hour backwards, 29th, and where was Jupiter? Where was Jupiter? So 1 hour. So the 29th degree, this is about the time where it's going to be exactly square to Jupiter. And you can get it by the minute if you play around with it. It can be up to 1 second of animation of the chart, which is amazing. Thank you, Peter. Um, well, this one has the ascendant in Leo. The sun is like applying to oppose Mars. That's not something I would pick. And we could have the ascendant, I believe, in Cancer, when we would have the moon applying to square Jupiter, to sextile Jupiter. Um, but then the ascendant would be close to Lilith, so depending on your like, and then Lilith and opposing to Pluto. Okay, don't. Or we can have the ascendant on Mercury, in Virgo, which would be ruled by Mercury, and Mercury's squaring Jupiter, which again creates problems. So it's a very problematic chart to squeeze out the last bit of Jupiter magic. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just don't know enough to tell you if that's any good to go. But the moon will be trining, separating from a trine to Pluto. So easing up a bit the Pluto heaviness that we have. Um, yeah, well, with Uranus in Taurus, the notion of the moon being exalted in Taurus is less felt because it's just the moon is crossing Uranus, so you're not gonna feel, oh, the moon is in Taurus and we are so thankful and abundant. So not this month, um, but it's okay. Then we're going to continue on a day forwards, and we have the moon applying to touch on Mars, and that would mean the moon will be, so we have this is the lunation, it's December 8th, and the moon is going to be conjuncting Mars again, a time that's going to be probably shaky, a time to do your self-care. Yeah, that I talked about this donation. Let's go. Why 1 month? It's 1 day. Meanwhile, in the sky, Jupiter is about to enter Aries, and we're going to touch on when that happens. Um, mm, 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 mm. Yeah, well, the moon is moving 9 December. The moon is moving to oppose Venus. Um, yeah, not that much of a big deal. It's just that, If you feel shaky or you feel like your emotions and your voice are at odds, then that transient is just going to go away within a couple of hours. Then Moon is going to oppose Mercury. Not the time, like be with the Moon being at home in Cancer and Mercury being practical and compassionless in Capricorn. It might not like if you need to talk with someone, postpone it, because it's not like they're not gonna be emotionally ready to hear you out, or you're gonna not gonna be emotionally ready to hear them out. But that's about it. And then of course the Moon is applying to conjunct Lilith and oppose Pluto. Anytime the Moon opposes Pluto, and this is one of the last lunations. No, not really the last lunations, but we still got it, or maybe it is the last lunation that the Moon is going to oppose Pluto from when Pluto is in Capricorn. The usual self-care with Moon opposition Pluto, okay? If you run into gaslighting, just avoid the person in general, or it may expose to you that somebody you need to get away from them. But the usual self-care, like the usual self-care, it's transient. We all go through this. It's annoying to go through this, and we're gonna have Lilith there, so it's not gonna make it any easiest for not to burst at people, which is perhaps blessed, because sometimes we do need to act out in order to set a boundary or actually eliminate any future conflict. Um, then we have December 12th. We have approaching the mid month. We're going to have the moon in Leo, still opposing. Well, let's go on with that. And the moon with Leo again. It's going to around. Let's see. Okay, so between the 13th and the 14th of December, give or take a day or two, depending on what side of the planet you are, the moon is going to oppose Saturn. And again, Saturn, anxiety, criticism, moon wants emotional safety and to be appreciated in Leo. So that can be a time of a bit of an emotional strife. Transient, do not take this too seriously. The moon is passing very quickly. Um, and Jupiter is still in Pisces. I'm going to tell you when that changes. And Mars is kind of beginning to be closer and closer to the point where he's going to be direct in January. So, yeah. Um, okay, Virgo. When the moon is in Virgo, it's going to make a nice trine applying to Uranus and kind of makes a nice trine here in the beginning to Mercury in Capricorn. So we have this nice sort of a kind of an earth trine, where if you can call it nice, with Uranus in there around the mid December. Um, that can be this can actually be a time of unexpected news, but a relieving, so good time for a good sense of humor, relief in jokes, satire that kind of break the ice, um, revelations, news. But again, with Mars in Gemini, going reverse, retrograde, square in this moon, we understand that this is not the final news. This is not the final word on this issue. So we shouldn't take it too seriously, but we will tend to, with this applying square of the moon to the retrograde Mars. Um, so that can affect us for a couple of hours, and it can be like a bittersweet moment. Um, nothing more than that. Let's see, 16th. When we get the moon applying to square Neptune from Virgo, foggy time. Okay, foggy emotional time. If you have any tendency towards addictions, then mark the 16th and 17th of December as days you need to be extra cautious. Um, because that can be a time when you can have a relapse uh, for the emotional, like you could feel loss, you could feel despair, you could feel um, a sense of a bubble popping, but that's transient, like it will be better within a day or two. um, so that's something good to be aware of. Then we get the moon opposing Jupiter, of course. So it begins to oppose in Virgo, and then proceeds on to Libra. Um, and yeah, so first the moon will be opposing Jupiter, and then it will be squaring Venus and Mercury. So the opposition to Jupiter again is not something I would elect, but it's also not too much of a big deal. It's just something Moon opposition Jupiter is tendency to go overboard with things. So, uh, Libra being relational, it can be either relationships or you can get infatuated with someone and tend to go overboard, which actually might not necessarily badly affect the connection, just the Mars will. Or you can just overestimate or overact or act from extreme optimism that might need a bit of a reality check later. Jupiter is already direct, so it's not for the retrograde of Jupiter. Um, but it's just a tendency to go overboard with things. The moon does still trine Pluto, so it will be strong Virgo, um, giving you some more emotional insight as to this Capricorn house again, something that we touch on every month that is unraveling, and the moon is approaching its final stages there, so we're heading towards a new moon in Capricorn. And so this trine to Pluto can give you another sense. It is actually important because the 16th, the 17th of December, you're going to get an emotional insight like if your tendency to have premonition, you might get a premonition into what you're going to begin with the new moon in Capricorn. And this moon, of course, later applies to square Venus and Mercury. Um, Nothing, it's like it's not something you want to use for anything, and for any election, and it's not too much of a big deal. Okay, it just might mean that if you want to speak about something, there will be a conflict between your emotion, your love language, and your communication. So you don't want to have an intimate emotional talk. On the other hand, it is a time where the moon is hard aspecting Mercury and Venus. So, a news about something financial, a news about agriculture, because Capricorn is agriculture, can be delivered on a mundane level. But again, with Mars, anything to do with Mercury suffering from Mars being retrograde, it's not the final word on the topic. Okay, so we can expect an event, but it's not going to be something we can rely on long term. Going on, and the moon is applying to trine Mars from Libra, and Saturn. Well, it's um, it's nice. We have here the chart on in this chart is the December 18th. The ascendant is in Sagittarius. Now you do have to take into account that the moon is decreasing. So if you want to eliminate difficulties, eliminate obstacles, eliminate something from your life, this could be something that you could use. I don't know the magical elections with I don't know lunar mansions still, and I don't know magical elections with the decreasing moon. Could you do something magical with the moon decreasing, asking to remove blocks, asking to decrease blocks and challenges in your life, or asking even to decrease the effects of Mars retrograde in Gemini in your life? Could that work for you? I don't know. let me know in the comments below if you have experience with magic and you've experienced with ritual and electional astrology, and I might get educated. So all in all, it's a good aspect, but it does begin to apply. Well, it does square Mercury, but trines Mars. So it's a big question. Like, would you rather hit to make a harmonious aspect to the ruler of Mars retrograde, and the hard aspect to Mars, or the other way around? I think both are equally disturbing. So we're going to have mixed results with this day. Don't take too seriously anything that comes up there. Unfortunately, it does have a long-term implications with the applying trine to Saturn. So we're going to have long-term confusion. If something starts this day, it's going to be a part of long-term confusion. Uh, but as a transient effect, is just going to give us mixed results. Okay, we might get the good aspect of fake news, for example. The news might not be correct, but it's going to be okay. That can be the case. Um, mm, mm, mm. Yeah, well, at the end of Libra, Pluto is already applying to square. The Moon is already applying to square Pluto. Again, you want to self care, okay? Because this can be a time where you can get shaky, you can get overpowered. Somebody might be gaslighting around you, depending on the houses, and so you want to self care during this time. This is December 19th or around 19th, 20th, depending on where you are on the globe. And then we have, of course, the Moon entering Scorpio. The Moon is at fall in Scorpio, so December 20th, December until December 22nd are going to be those days of the month when the Moon is in Scorpio. So depending on what you have in a Scorpio and how sensitive you are to the passage of the Moon, this can be that you need to kind of contract, to withdraw in, to not take too seriously what you're feeling and thinking during these days, but do observe them. And so when the Moon hits Sagittarius, you're going to be you're going to be more, well, not Sagittarius in this case, but after the new moon, you're going to be able to reflect and reach better results, and better clarity of mind there because of clarity of emotions. And not only that, it's going to also spend some time oppositing Uranus. So the 2020 until 22nd of December are going to be those days where you just want to do nothing. Okay, you might get this overwhelming insights as to what went wrong, what needs to be different, and what you need to let go of as the moon is closing in. um, I know it's applying the sextile Pluto to from the end of Scorpio. Again, you might get even more informed on what you need to let go before with this cycle, what you can begin to release and to work on releasing with the new moon, or coming to the closing, like with the last course of the moon. Yeah, so 27th degree, that's going to be the 21st, exactly. Moon sextiling Pluto, Moon applying to trine Jupiter. It's an interesting one. Jupiter is already, so this is where Jupiter is already in Aries. Okay, let's just go one day forward. Maybe I missed something. Okay. The 21st is when Jupiter ingresses into Aries, right when the Sun is about to ingress into Capricorn. So the Sun is squaring Jupiter, and that tells us that Jupiter begins with the conflict, is visible. Okay, this is going to be a visible ingress into Aries. And the alleviation of trining of the moon, again, would I work with that? Well, no. you know um so it's going to be a very visible. There may be an event, I don't see it as visible in terms of necessarily action, uh, but it like somebody's going to make a show. Okay, someone is going to make a show. Someone is going to be very dramatic. I don't see Mars making any aspects here, so I can't relate it necessarily to Mars. I do see Mercury there, within orb to sort of sextile that Jupiter. So it can be an announcement or a dramatic announcement that somebody wants to make. But again, it can be a lot of drama, but not the final word on a topic. Um, and the moon there, could you say that the moon I know that the last decan of Scorpio, and thanks to Twitter Astro for repeating that. The last decan of Scorpio is Jupiter ruled, so we already get a more optimistic moon there. Very very transient. It is the best time probably if you want to elect a time to do a ritual of letting go, of purging, whatever you need from this cycle of the moon, then that could be a good time to do so. 22nd, Moon in Sag opposing Mars in Mercury. So we get the Moon in an optimistic Sagittarius sign in the very beginning. So let's go a couple of hours backward. Another couple of hours backward. Oh, yeah. So yeah, it will trine Jupiter, but apply to oppose Mars right from the get-go, which is annoying. Like, it's not the most annoying thing that you could have, but it's not something that's going to give you an election for something. But then again, it's the last quarter moon, so either way, you're not going to do much with this moon. Then on the 23rd, we're going to have the new moon, which we talked about in Capricorn. So Sun ingresses into Capricorn on 22nd December. It's already 20 minutes there, so yeah, but it's 22nd December. Moon, yeah, squaring Jupiter, but Jupiter is no longer in Pisces. And yeah, I don't know if you want to capitalize on Jupiter in the Mars decan of Mars ruled sign when the moon opposes Mars. I don't know, maybe you want something to do with that, but not my field of expertise. So we're just gonna go on. So we already have, the ingress of Jupiter, the ingress of the Sun to Capricorn. Yeah, I didn't talk about the ingress of Venus and Mercury to Capricorn. Then I'll talk about that later. Where is where is the moon? Okay, so moon applying to new moon, which we talked about, and then moon moving forward. Okay, this is the new moon. And yeah, we talked about this new moon, and then the moon will apply to trine Uranus. An interesting one because it will apply to trine Uranus when it's applying to conjunct Venus and then Mercury. Again, shocking announcements that will need to be revised. So you can have a shocking fake news. Not something of too much importance. If you do meet somebody new at that day, because I know it's going to be another, new moon, so the moon will be growing, so you might meet someone in the Capricorn house. Do remember that Mars is still retrograde in Gemini. So like the direction is unclear for this relationship, but this relationship can flip 180 on you, for the better or for the worse. um mm, 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 mm. Yeah, moon is just continuing on to conjunct Venus. We talked about trine Uranus, they're nice, I like those Venus Uranus trines, it's kind of it's worth taking, it's worth going for it. Like if you get something new there, it's worth going. Venus, although it's 18 degree, which according to this is Nicola Stojanovic, is not a happy degree for any planet to be. The 18 degree is considered a misfortunate degree. So you might not want to start a new Venusian thing. But when Venus is still in this 17th degree, you might go for it, because Venus Uranus happy aspects can be something transient, and we do not have a touch to, well, we do have a bit of a touch of Saturn, so it can be long term, but Venus Uranus is something that tends to revolutionize your life, to set you on a new path. So I'm not saying go for everything that challenges your nervous system, but if you are stagnant, that can take that stagnation out of you and can give you some new insights, some fresh excitement in your life that can actually be constructive. So yes, the Mars thing is can, like, it can flip on you, but if it's not an especially intimate relationship or especially sexual relationship, because Mars is quite sexual, then you might get benefit from that connection between Venus and Uranus. Same with Mercury Uranus. So yeah, and the Moon approaching to sextile Neptune, transient, harmless, mainly in itself harmless. Um, and then we have 25th December, the moon conjuncts Pluto. The moon conjunct Pluto is another. It's like it's an opening of a cycle between the moon and Pluto. So you can get deep emotions, intensity, deep insights, self care, self care, self care. It is sextile in Neptune. And yeah, so, and Jupiter. So it's a deep day. It's not necessarily a difficult day, but it's a deep day. Deep emotional understanding, a deep insight into the way you think or how your beliefs affect your position of power in the world or the lack of. And that can be a psychological, mini psychological transformation that you can experience, which result will be blessed as the moon will be proceeding to its next cycle. And so after the moon has been informed with Pluto, it heads on to a meeting with Saturn. Yeah, it's heading on to a meeting with Saturn. On the way, applying to trine a retrograde Mars, which is completely misleading and useless information. Like, you're not going to get anything out of it except for, alleviation of the way Mars feels in Gemini. So don't take anything seriously from that. And that was 25th December, 26th December. Um, and we are approaching the moon's conjunction with Saturn. Yes, 26th December. Some of you 27th. So of course we're going to have a moon approaching to square Uranus. What did we say about Moon Uranus hard aspects? Don't worry, you're not going psychotic. It's going to pass within a couple of hours. Okay, it's just your nervous system getting excited and your emotional system getting excited, and then you have the obstruction of Saturn there. So the moon conjuncting Saturn, Saturn is contraction, cold, anxiety, emotional reality check. But because it's so close, then I wouldn't say it's even an emotional reality check. It's more like heaviness that will be lifted off as the moon proceeds to Pisces. So this is another one of those self-care days, the 26th of December. Um, mm, mm, mm. And as the moon is moving forward, go to the 27th. This will be a bit of a void, of course, I see here. And then it enters Pisces. So the moon ingresses into Pisces in the 27th of December, sextiling the sun. This is one of those days where we don't have anything terrible to say. Sun is in Capricorn, practical sun. The sun does not suffer or enjoys in Capricorn. She's like neutral. Um, the moon in Pisces is deep and emotional, creative, but having this nice reality check that is practical, warm, and loving from the sun. I don't see anything special around it. Again, I did not include asteroids in here, so an asteroid reading could give us a deeper insight, and I might do that towards December. Um, but all in all, this is a nice day. Okay, it is a nice day. In this chart, the ascendant is on Neptune, but of course, it's not an electional chart for anything. It's just a nice day. It's just a nice, relaxing day that you can enjoy without thinking too much, which is a blessing that we all need from time to time. So, this is the end of December. Um, Again, we have happy moon, and then it will, and then the moon will square Mars, transient, couple of hours. You're gonna go through this, you know. Maybe someone can say a harsh word that unnerves you. Don't take it too seriously. Probably shouldn't. There's like no real, like nothing terribly important. Um, 28th, and the moon is already applying to conjunct Neptune, which surprisingly enough is not a big deal, because this is lovely, because when the moon will conjunct Neptune, it will no longer be squaring Mars. Okay, so Mars is no longer in the orb of the square to Neptune, which is a blessing. And then we're just going to have this beautiful moon in Pisces, sextile Venus and Mercury in Capricorn. I know Venus is not like the happiest in Capricorn. She's just a Saturn rule sign after all. But still, you know, moon conjunct Neptune, unless you have tendency for addiction, so you want to self-care and you want to mark the 28th and the 29th as days to pay attention to make sure that you have everything that helps you to remain accountable. But other than that, it can be quite a creative day. Wonderful for nice romance, sensuality, good communication. If you need to talk with someone, this is a time where you can get to talk about your feelings, because it doesn't require you to be correct in terms of the fact, but you can be genuine and talk about your feelings, and you can actually get a practical discussion that acknowledges each other's feelings, um, or do something creative together, dance, sing. Um, just a wonderful day, and you might want to take a hold to get a hold of this day, as Mercury and Venus are approaching the last decan in Capricorn, heading towards Aquarius, and heading towards the conjunction with Pluto. So there we have this exact conjunction, and the moon continues on. Yeah, well, when the moon reaches the end decan of Pisces, it squares the sun. Not like, okay, not something is going to be too harsh for you. Um, and then it conjoins Jupiter. Now, take note, the Jupiter is already in Aries, and it applies to square. No, it's separating from a square with the Sun, but the Moon is applying to square the Sun. So we're going to have a magnification of the Sun Jupiter square theme. Okay, again, someone is being over dramatic, but in terms of content and facts, this is not the last word. Like, we don't have all the facts correctly. You might be the person who's being over dramatic, but you don't have the facts correctly. So it just magnifies that Jupiter thingy. And Jupiter in the first decan of Aries is Mars ruled, so it's Mars, and Mars is retrograde. A big pile of no concrete stuff. So yeah. Okay, then we have the 29th December. Moon enters Aries, applying to square the Sun, and then it will be applying to conjunct Chiron again. See, so we begin with the Moon. Yeah. And we are already on the 30th. Um, the moon will still square the sun. The moon will still be separating from the square to the sun as it conjuncts Chiron. But this conjunction with Chiron, we have a sextile to retrograde Mars. So retrograde Mars is reflective about strategy, and about initiation, aggression, boundary setting, and the moon in Aries, that is Mars ruled, can give us moments of insight, of emotional insight as to how our actions affect our feeling, or how our feeling affect our action, which can help us to strategize. So we might want to take note of the insights that we have, because we're going to have both the wonderful, elegant sextile between Moon and Mars, and then we're going to have the conjunction of Moon and Chiron that is ruled by Mars in Aries. So you want to do, this is the day, the 30th of December. You might adjust it to your location. This is a day when you might want to have journaling. You might want to write down what you feel, how you feel, your strategies, because you're going to want to review that as Mars turns direct, and you can act on the insights that you're having now. We're gonna go all the way. Okay, remember that the sun applying to square Chiron. Chiron is already direct by now, so we have, I owe you the ingress of Venus and Mercury to Capricorn, and the turning direct of Chiron. So I owe you these two things so far. Yeah. And the moon is already approaching, applying to the end of Friday, the 30th of December. Moon is approaching its first sextile to Pluto, so beginning a new Moon Pluto cycle. And so and every Moon Pluto cycle is unraveling a deeper layer of the story of Pluto in Capricorn in your life. Again, this happens every month throughout the months. The sextile is going to be this harmonious, deep insight. It's not going to be conflictual. It's just going to be a slight uh, a slight unraveling of another layer. Think about an onion when you peel the layer. So this is going to be peeling another layer, but not ripping the other layer off, but just peeling another layer gently to unravel another deep insight that you have relative to this cycle. Um, yeah, and then the moon applies to sextile Saturn. Again, another slight unraveling, deep insight, an emotional reality check that is beneficial and is harmonious, that you can tap into. If you can tap into right on December 23rd, this is Saturday, if you can tap into how you feel about restrictions and limitations in your life, the Saturn, or the places where you may be over optimistic or over uh, pessimistic, then you can have an emotional insight and a new sense of rejuvenation. But it does square Mercury there and applying to square Venus, so you might not be able to communicate those realizations, but the nonverbal, the emotional level is going to get a good contraction and reality check. Not so much so that it lets you down, but more like okay, this is what we can do, this is what we can achieve. And now I am able to accept that on a psychological and an emotional level, and I'm able to contract myself to just what I absolutely can do. And that's going to lead you up for the next cycle. Um, mm, yeah. Anything more we want to say about that? Do we get an ingress of the moon to mm, 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 mm. Yes, so depending on where you are, I think for those in US, you will still get the moon ingressing to Taurus, um, applying to it is actually applying to still to square, and some of you will get another cycle. No, no. So we'll get the moon ingressing into Taurus, first decan of Taurus, and that's that. Okay, so that is what the moon is going to trigger throughout the month. Now, I said I owe you stuff, so not doing it like that. Let's go to these Astro Tools monthly astro calendar. We did the lunations. Now we're going to go to Mercury ingressing. So Mercury, so it's entering Sagittarius, but I want to see the ingress into Capricorn. Oh, of course, because I'm looking at November. Back! So Mercury enters Capricorn on December 7th, right before the new moon. So we talked about the new moon. That tells us that, we're going to open a new cycle with Mercury in a more practical sign. So this is interesting because Mercury in Sagittarius, and we have him all the way to December 7th in Sagittarius. Let's open a chart here. And the Mercury we see here. This is Mercury in 29th, about to ingress into Capricorn. Mercury in Sagittarius is Mercury Jupiter ruled, and this is exactly the sign opposite to the sign where Mercury is ruling, that's Gemini. So Mercury is in detriment. And that is not his fault, but that tells us that Mercury is not strong in Sagittarius. However, it's not a bad thing for small systems oriented Mercury, small detail oriented Mercury, to be aware of the big picture Jupiterian territory. And so Mercury can actually get small insight about those big picture that we don't usually see and communicate them to the world. This is one of the detriment signs that are really not detriment at all the way I see it, but you can always have like your own. I think Jupiter is doing both, like Jupiter is doing worse in Gemini than Mercury is doing in Sagittarius, but feel free to correct me. Um, and anyway, the exchange between them is necessary. Okay, it's the ideology or the philosophy or the higher mind versus practical day to day trade, agreements, communication between people, hands on experience. Okay, hands on, Gemini, hands. So hands on experience. While Jupiter is, higher thinking, philosophy, and so on and so forth. So the meeting of these two is always carrying fruits that we need to consider. And then, we have, Mercury ingressing to Capricorn, practical communication, contracted communication, reality checks, less optimistic, but very if Mars was not doing its thing in the retrograde in Gemini, I could say this was a good time we could get the details to actually be correct. Or alternatively, communicating about the structure of the system. Okay, so communicating structures to each other, or to society. And so Venus ingresses to Capricorn on December 10th, so 3 days after Mercury. And this one is a bit more of a change of mood because Venus in Sagittarius is free and liberated and joyous and perhaps flirtatious, but in an intellectual way. And Mercury and Venus moving into a Saturn ruled sign. Um, Now Venus is climbing up the ladder. She's contracted. She is in the sign of a planet that is not a friend of hers. Jupiter is a friend of Venus. Saturn is not. Um, she's less loving. She's less warm. Um, she does. She's like, again, it's not her fault. Like, or is it? No, Virgo is her fault. But it's not the sign she's happy in. And so the Venus and Capricorn, while you might meet someone or a partner up with, so it can be good for business that, or for long-term partnerships that are fair if you find a good election. But all in all, there would need to be something extra that allows for this to be a warm emotional union around that time. So just talking about Venus and Capricorn, I feel like, I need to drink some water. And Chiron, Chiron, Chiron turning direct on December 23rd. We don't have a chart for that. Um, so yeah, Chiron is, yes, stationing direct on December. Is, yeah, going direct, stationing. When is it stationing? I don't know, but it's already direct in December 23rd. And so let's try to catch a chart here and manipulate it. So let's move it around for 10 days. Beep. So 10 days. Do I have a 10 days? I think I have, okay, I have a week. And then I would need to do it 3 days. So 1, 2, 3. And we have Chiron turning direct. There we see Chiron in Aries, middle decan of Aries. Um, it's still Mars world. So if Chiron retrograde was bringing up stuff to reflect upon, now you can actually heal those stuff that you reflected upon. Now you can actually make those changes. It's still going to stir up things, but you're more resilient. You have a new perspective. You're readier to deal with those things that were wounded around the Aries house. However, the ruler Mars is still retrograde, so you're still in the cycle of reflection upon things. It's just not a double reflection, it's only a Mars reflection. When Mars turns direct, and that would be already in January, that is when things are going to move ahead, also in the Aries house. So you might want to pay attention for that. But now you're preparing. All this might feel a bit of a full gas and neutral because with the Chiron place, you might feel like you're ready to move ahead, but you're not able to take action yet because Mars is retrograde, and so that might affect you for a while. Um, do take notes, journal your insights, journal your strategies, your healing, journal your resilience mindsets with Jupiter here, resilience mindsets, because they're going to show effective when Mars turns direct. That was December. Um, yeah, I think I gave you all that I said I will. So that's December. And all in all, it's not a terrible month. Okay, it's way easier than the entire 2022 so far. So you're gonna have a Merry Christmas, um, and a bit of a relief from what we've been going on so far. A lot easier. I keep saying that over and over again. But hey, finally, you know, some downtime, some relaxing news, some, like, we still have the ongoing stuff. We still have, the squares, the oppositions, the difficult aspects, but it's not outer planets to outer planets anymore. Okay? We still have eclipses on major significant axes of the Mars Venus ruled signs, um, but not this month. So, uh, easier, the lunations are easier, life is getting a bit of a relief. And yes, Jupiter is no longer in Pisces, but it was in Pisces during very turbulent times, and so it served its role well. Um, so yeah, I'm Betty Livina. I'm Talishir on Twitter, Shirley Youngblood on Instagram. If you wonder if I do the readings, yes, I do. Uh, you're gonna have to contact me for that though. Okay, you contact me. I do not contact you. I have my contact details on the About section in my channel. Damn. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.